All right, we're live. What's up, everybody? My name is Sunny Ray. This is the Sunny Ray Show. Today, I'm joined by Ari Gutnik. Ari, where are you calling in from?
How's it going? I am calling in from Ojai, California today.
Oh my goodness! Oh, hi, California. I was actually there last year.
Wow.
Wow, what a beautiful place! There's like this golf course that
Yeah.
there was this event at, and I was taken aback by it. And it turned out there's a lot to that place than meets the eye, and I just left with a very positive vibe.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. Ojai is considered for more spiritual folks as an energetic vortex. So we fall into like this small valley that's east of Ventura, east of Santa Barbara. And people from all walks come here to, actually kind of retreat and do yoga and work on their wellness and mindfulness. And so it does hold that space for a lot of people who are working on themselves personally and professionally.
Yeah, I'd heard that. I left away, intrigued. So, I've not too much of a format, but I like to kick off with just maybe like a couple lines or a line or two on what you're working on today. Yeah, and then maybe we'll reverse a little bit and go through your story, and then land back at what you're working on today by the end of the interview.
Yeah.
But do you want to share a little bit? Yeah.
Yeah, totally. What I'm working on right now, it's called Loom, Lume, and we're essentially a performance lab for entrepreneurs and founders. And so what we do is we have the way we support founders is we have a few pillars in that we do that with. So the first is we pair entrepreneurs with operator-led executive coaches. What I mean by operator-led is all of our coaches have previous founder or previous operating experience. The second is health optimization. When you're a founder, you're working late hours, you're focused on your business. You might struggle with work-life balance. And so we actually have a group of specialists across 6 health categories: sleep, exercise, financial well-being, longevity and focus and flow. And so our founders have access to these specialists to work on their nutrition, their well-being. And then the third thing is peer-to-peer group forums. We have workshops where we bring all of these founders in, where they can share challenges, share achievements, and support one another. And then the fourth thing is like a lot of this is it's hard to kind of bring, data into the coaching experience, right? A lot of people say like, oh, how do I define our ROI when it comes to coaching? Well, we actually check in with all of our founders on our platform after one or two, each of their 1 or 2 sessions. We check in, we have them answer a couple questions. And so they can actually build, they could really define how they progress on our platform and change and transform.
That's really interesting. Cool. So you grew up in, is it Agora Hills with your twin brother and your dad? I read was also an entrepreneur. So I guess my question was, what was the first thing you ever tried to sell or build as a kid?
It's a great question. I'm happy you asked that. When I was in high school with my identical twin brother, we started a company called Goody's Cones. What we did was we manufactured flavored ice cream cones and sold them to ice cream stores, ice cream parlors, ice cream shops. And so we had around 10 to 15 stores in our local neighborhood that sold flavored ice cream cones. Think vanilla, think caramel, think cinnamon, think peanut butter. The cone itself is flavored, and then people would match their ice cream that they chose to go in a complimentary flavored cone.
How old were you into this?
I was around 17. So I was 17. My twin brother and I were 17. My dad, obviously I come from a line of 2 entrepreneurs, my dad and my grandfather, who have their own entrepreneurial story themselves. But I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I was taught at a young age to take risks, to be bold, to start something new if you're passionate about it.
I asked because I've got an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old that are right now planning an ice cream coup of sorts, and so yeah, I've been trying to figure out how to encourage them. But I think we've got first step is they're gonna do a little lemonade stand at the local baseball park, right by the house here, where we can just go and set up shop every weekend in the summertime, and it's like hundreds of people. Um,
Place to start might make a lot of money if it's a good
yeah,
location, right?
one actually my daughter's younger one's best friend, who's I think a year younger than her, who lives just down the street, did that last year. She took her birthday money and went and set up shop, and went and bought a lemonade stand. I thought that was so resourceful, because you hear about that stuff in the movies, but you don't see quite often that people actually take that kind of initiative. So you went on to go to UT Austin. You studied advertising. Was that always the plan, or did you like kind of fall into it?
Yeah, it's a good question. So when I was in high school, I really started to become passionate in photography. And my older brother grew up as a filmmaker. He was, writing and directing, short films while I was growing up, like in the house. I was an actor, so the arts were always something that I looked up to. But I happened to, study photography for 5 years in high school. And given that my parents, or my dad specifically, was an entrepreneur, I asked myself before going to college, what do I want to study? And I felt like advertising, specifically creative advertising, is sort of a blend between both of those, right? So, because advertising is a very visual form of a modality, but it also has metrics, and you have to be a good businessman in order to understand, the advertising process. And so I decided to go into advertising, but things switched. I switched career paths in college, which I'm happy to share about as well.
So you built a mobile calendar app for students, right? So what made you want to jump into building products that early?
Yeah, it was, good question. I think, once again, I wanted to go the advertising route, but I was in Austin, Texas. Austin has, at the time, back in like 2012, 2013, was having a boom in sort of their entrepreneurial community. And my freshman year, I realized that there's so many events happening on campus, whether it's the campus hosting their own events, whether it's student organizations hosting their own events. And so I came to think that, in this digital world that we were in, there was no digital calendar that showcased any of these events in one sort of consolidated into one user-friendly application on your phone. And so, yeah, I partnered up with a good friend in high school who went to USC, and we got to work. And by my sophomore year, we launched a calendar app at University of Texas, at USC, at Indiana, at Arizona State. And so we built that. It was an amazing experience. I learned so much. We hired a dev team. We hired interns. We hired, a small team of folks on each campus to represent us. And I felt, this was the first time that I felt like I had something that people were using. And that feeling, that exchange that I was feeling, was really, really strong in my body. And so, yes, I was studying advertising, and originally I thought I wanted to go into, the creative side of advertising. But this feeling that I had building and releasing and seeing people play with an app that I created from the ground up really stuck to me. And so that's when I kind of shifted my career path, got involved in the Austin startup community, and really just jumped right into tech, and was so excited about how technology was shaping our world.
And then after school, you were deep into, I guess, the music festival, right, world, running marketing for Euphoria. So what was that life like, and what pulled you away from it?
Yeah, I mean, a big passion of mine is music and live music. And so I actually, this was my first internship, one of my first internships. And I met one of the founders of this music festival based in Austin on a flight. And he, after talking to him for an hour, 2 hours on a flight, he was like, "Why don't you just come work with me? And well, I'll be your mentor. And why don't you come and take over, a department at this music festival?" It was kind of on the ambassador and sales and marketing and student discount side. So I started there, and yeah, that was an amazing experience as well. I loved going to music festivals growing up, and so it was just sort of a really good fit. Although it was short lived, that music festival ended the year that the second year that I was a part of it, for a number of reasons, but it was just an amazing, experience. It was 10 people, that was building a festival that had 30,000 attendees. And so it really operated like a startup as well.
And then you joined Bird, I guess when electric scooters were exploding, right? So what was that like, being inside of a rocket ship during that time?
This is something I could talk about for hours. I mean, what a opportunity. I graduated from school. I moved back to Los Angeles, and I was looking for work. Really, like my first real, like after Euphoria, which was like sort of connected to my university experience, like this was my first real job. I joined Bird. I was the 39th employee. And so they, I think, raised like $10 million when I first joined. And once again, if you look back, Bird was the fastest growing company to reach $3.5 billion within like a year. 3.5 billion valuation. Sorry, they didn't raise 3.5, but it was the valuation. And it was a rocket ship. I started out as, someone who, at first they had 100 scooters in San Diego and 100 scooters in Santa Monica. By the time that I left Bird about 2.5 years later, they probably deployed over, 10 to 20,000 birds worldwide. And that's literally within like a 2-year span, and grew the team from 39 from when I joined to over 1,000 employees. And so I was originally on sort of the onboarding and charging team. I then worked in university partnerships, where I was responsible for bringing Bird scooters to different universities so we can operate scooters on their campus. And once again, operated like a startup, was super exciting. I met some of my best friends during this experience. I really loved being on a team that really was passionate about what we were doing. I mean, we thought we were transforming micromobility, transportation, right? And although, today we don't see many birds or micromobility scooters out in the world, at the time we did. And that's what was really thrilling about that experience.
So your dad is an executive coach and your mom is a therapist, right? So did you realize growing up like how much that, would shape you?
Yeah. I didn't. I mean, it was just kind of a natural thing. My dad, my dad partnered with my grandfather when he was when he graduated college, and together they built a stuffed animal business, which, was acquired later for quite a bit of money, but started in my dad's garage. So it was really kind of a rags to riches story. And yeah, being, the third generation, really, if you start from my grandfather, I was always influenced by that, always inspired by, the possibility of starting something and growing it and being a leader, and growing a company. And so, yeah. And then my mom was actually not a therapist. She was a life coach and still is a life coach. So my dad was always like a really amazing executive business coach, helping, turned executive coach who, was helping people build their businesses, while my mom was really on the well-being side, was on the personal development side. And so growing up, under two parents that were really all about personal and professional growth allowed me to find the confidence to do and step into new things myself and learn and know that I'm going to make mistakes, learn from them, and keep going.
You've also openly talked about burning out in 2023. Can you walk us through what that actually looked like day to day, and how you found your way through it?
100%. Back in the early 2020s, I was at a job and I got seriously burnt out. And one day I woke up and I said, I need to make a shift, and I quit my job. And there was a period of like 6 months where I was really down. I was really depressed. I was really anxious. I didn't know. I had a bit of an identity crisis. I didn't know what direction I wanted to go in next. I felt like my confidence was really low. And I had to take at one point I had to, figure out how to get out of the hole. And one of the things that I wanted to share and touch upon was I actually discovered breath work. And really it's called transformational or holotropic breath work, where you actually breathe. You breathe in a specific style for over 30 minutes. And this type of breath work really allows you to tap into your body, to feel your emotion, to release stuck energy, which allowed me to actually I practiced breath work for quite a while, which actually gave me some hope in this moment. Later in my life, I ended up becoming a breathwork facilitator. Thanks to that moment, I ended up becoming a yoga instructor. Thanks to that moment as well, because from that point on, I really needed to help. Really needed to work on my personal well-being. In that moment too, I also really worked with my dad and a few executive coaches. And the executive coaches weren't because I was unemployed, it was more about what do you want to do? Let's break down, what do you want to do? And what's your career path? And how do you want to contribute to the world? And so collectively, if you think about it, at the time I was practicing yoga, I was, being mentored to learn breath work. I was working with two executive coaches, one being my dad, which doesn't really count, but I'll just say it does in some sense, allowed me to move out of this dark place in my life and start my career, start my life back again. And so this is sort of actually, I know we're going to come full circle to what we're building at Loom, but as you can see, this is actually, although I started Loom a few years later in my life, this was sort of the foundation of what we do and how we support founders.
And you also had this realization that you were living in a world of or versus and. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think that's a hard one. I just think that I was living a very binary life. I was seeing, I think we live in a world where everything is kind of in the gray, right? We're going to have ups, we're going to have downs. It's not like I'm doing well or not doing well. We're all living in this gray area. And I think at the time, I was seeing things in sort of a binary way, like I'm this or I'm that, versus I'm this and I'm that. We can, something that I've learned is you can feel and have emotion that you can have conflicting emotions inside our bodies at the same time. You could feel really sad, but really excited for, a vacation. You could feel really shameful, but you could also feel really hopeful that things might change. A lot of the times in life, we tend to kind of identify a more powerful emotion in our lives that dictates our actions, but really we are made up of several different parts and they all exist simultaneously. Sometimes ones are louder than others. And so I think maybe I didn't answer that question like exactly how you were expecting, but I think that's probably, that's how I am interpreting it.
Yeah, and then you also, I don't know if you like, I was reading about this. You were saying how, at one point you said that the business used to dictate how you felt. When things were good, you felt good, right? Versus when they weren't, you didn't feel good. So that really resonated. I was going to ask you about is like, how did you finally break that pattern? I mean, I think it's something that a lot of people probably struggle with, including
Oh,
myself.
no, of course. I think like every founder has this moment, right? I think like every founder is trying to build something, and it's sometimes, when you're building something that you built from the ground up, it's your baby. You want it to succeed so badly, and I think because we tend to do that because we think that like the business is a reflection of us, right? We tend to blend who we are as an individual with our business. And so when the business does, like you said, when the business is succeeding, if we're growing, if we're getting sales, if we're growing our team, if the team is happy, then you're happy. But and vice versa, right? If things aren't going well, if you're losing a client, then you become unhappy. And I think the biggest thing to do in that situation is to really separate the two and work on that you are not your business. You're working on your business, you're working on your business, and your business, you pray, you're working hard to make your business succeed, but it shouldn't dictate who you are, what you represent, how you're contributing to the world, what your values are, how your friends and family, how you show up for your friends or family. And so, and you have to really, I think what was really powerful too is like, there are so many founders and entrepreneurs out there, but 9 out of 10 businesses fail. And the great founders and entrepreneurs through history have built several companies. And it's typically not till their like third or fourth company that things really work. And so you also have to see this as your business may not succeed. And once again, but you'll have another chance. Your business is not a reflection of you. And I think that rings really true for me. And at the beginning of my founder journey, that was very true. I was really, I identified myself with my business, and I've had to actually unlearn that. And yeah, so, and there's so many uncontrollables. I think a lot of founders, they think that like, if their business isn't succeeding, they have to work more. They have to put in more hours. They have to figure out the next solution. When really sometimes it's timing. It's the economy. It's the advent of AI, right? We're seeing a lot of businesses starting to fail because of AI, but that's not their fault. That's just because of the times we're living. Like AI is now this huge tool that is like changing our world. Well, if your business isn't going to operate in the age of AI, well, you're not alone in that. And you might have to pivot, you might have to fold, but that doesn't mean you can start something new. And so you have to break that. You have to create a boundary between what you're working on and who you are.
Cool, I like that. So you also hitchhiked from LA to New York using only social media, right? And you made a documentary about it. Was that experience a turning point in how you think about human connection?
Yeah. Oh, great. Yeah. And people can watch this on YouTube if they'd like. We made this into about a 20-minute documentary, which is fun. Feels like a vlog now because so many people are creating content. But yeah, this was fun. When I graduated from college, and I did a social experiment, and it kind of stemmed from a paper that I wrote in college about social media and the 6 degrees of separation. So if you know about the 6 degrees of separation theory with Kevin Bacon, who popularized it, you are 6 introductions away from anyone in the world. Well, there was a new study that proved that we're actually only 4 degrees from everyone in the world because of the advent of social media. the whole concept of 6 degrees was kind of built before, so Instagram and Snap and Facebook and now TikTok was invented. And so the study proved that we're actually not 6 degrees, we're now 4 degrees, which is quite remarkable. And I went to my whole, sort of experiment was, can I travel from LA to New York using social media without going past 4 degrees of separation? So I was proving it. And so I had to basically get rides and places to stay through through the degrees of people in my network, in my social media network. And so we were sharing this online. It was an experiment that, over, a couple thousand people were engaging with, because they wanted to participate and help me get to New York. So it took me 29 days. The whole idea was like, can I do this in 30 days? We wanted to create some parameters so it could be as dramatic as possible. It took me 29 days to achieve this feat. And we turned it into a documentary. It's 20 minutes. It's really fun. It's not too serious. But what the documentary really shows actually is less about like how fun it was to actually do this journey, but how really a reflection about how we're using social media. And the insight was that, like, so many of my interactions that I had, I was not present in the moment because I was so worried or, so focused on getting a next ride or a next place to stay that I wasn't actually being as present as I can be with the people that I was with. So sort of the thesis or the conclusion of the story is that we need to actually use social media that's going to positively impact our lives. Because if we don't, once again, we're not going to be as present as possible. We're not going to be able to connect with people on a level that we'd like to connect with. So there's the project. It's called Project 4 Degrees if you want to look it up on YouTube.
Oh, for sure. That's going on the weekend watch list. So at what point did you look at everything you'd been through and say, this is what I need to build next?
Yeah, I think, it's a good question. I think one, I brought in a co-founder who had an executive coach previously. She actually brought me on, and she had some really life-changing experience working with her executive coach because she had a previous venture called 20. And I came in with her, and I had this experience, as I mentioned before, when I was deep in the weeds of my depression that allowed me to get out of it, which was working with a group of health coaches, right? Breathwork, yoga, mindfulness, and my executive coaches as well, my dad and another executive coach. And together it allowed me to really thrive. And so we both wanted to build an executive coaching platform, but we said, what do most people, specifically founders, deal with? Well, a lot of founders want to work with folks that have been in their shoes before. Okay, operator-led coaches that have previous operating experience. 2, access to health coaches, because when you're a founder, your health typically goes out the window. Well, let's give them access to people that can actually improve their health and well-being. 3 is a group environment for founders to share things with one another. There are more solo entrepreneurs today than ever before, right? So although there's so many founders that are building businesses, but they don't have teams, they don't have co-founders, they don't have executive assistants. And that's primarily because of AI. AI is allowing them to create agents, to create executive assistants that are all computers essentially. And so more people want a sense of community among other founders, but they also need an executive coach to help them manage the high highs and the low lows. And so that's kind of where we fell. That's kind of where we landed.
So what is Loom exactly? Break it down for someone hearing about it for the first time.
Yeah, Loom, we call it a performance lab, right? I think founders at the end of the day, they want to perform at their peak, right? And a lot of times when they're not getting the level of support, that most founders who don't get support get burnt out. They work too hard. They can't manage their emotions. They find it, they get imposter syndrome. They have a hard time communicating. Their health kind of goes out the window because they think like, if my business is failing, the solution is to work harder, not slower, right? And so what we did was we built this performance platform that has those three elements, right? Operator-led coaching, health optimization, and peer-to-peer groups. And so, yeah, they, with this is the performance lab we've created. We believe it's a really amazing and thoughtful lab for them to actually tap into as a resource for them to perform at their highest level.
And why use those words, performance lab versus coaching platform?
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think coaching can feel a little fluffy, right? I think like a lot of people, there's also a lack of education around coaching, right? Like, oh, I have a therapist. Why do I need a coach? Or what can a coach really provide me that I don't already have? Like, there's a lot of lack of education around coaching, but most founders and entrepreneurs can have a lot of awareness. These are smart people. They can have a lot of awareness when they're not performing at their best. And they tend to get to that place when, like I said, their emotional and mental, capacity breaks. They feel burnt out. They've been working 15 hours, but they can't solve and get to the next phase of their business. They hit a point, most founders hit a point where they go, wow, is this worth it? And it's typically because they're not performing at their best. And performance, a lot, I ask my coaches this, what does performance mean? Well, it means founders who slow down and process and think clearly, people who feel confident, people who can relate and connect and communicate effectively with different people and different stakeholders, whether it's their investors, whether it's their co-founder, whether it's their team. It's about feeling joyful, happy, curious inside. And so those things break and they come to us because they say, you know what, I need to perform better. And our coaches, a lot of times, they don't tell their founders to work harder, to get more aggressive, to host more meetings. It's actually quite the opposite. We see a lot of coaches that say, let's slow down, let's breathe, let's reduce the amount of meetings on your calendar, let's eat better, let's sleep better. And then all of a sudden, whether there are big breakthroughs, sometimes it's just like a huge breakthrough, but a lot of times it's these subtle micro adjustments that actually allow that person to thrive again, to reconnect with their mission, reconnect with their purpose, reconnect with what they're building. And so they could actually perform at their peak.
This is obviously a topic that's I'm sure near and dear to a lot of people's hearts. I know for sure something I think a lot about. But we're at the end of our time. Would love to do a part 2, Ari. This was amazing. It went by so quickly. I personally love things like, I don't know if you've heard of pranayama. It's on my. It's like it's the breathing part of yoga.
Pranayama.
Pranayama. Okay, so there you go. Same thing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's something I learned maybe 15 years ago, and it's had a deep impact on my life. But yeah, let's peel this all back and go a bit deeper on the next one. But for now, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Ari, for your time, and until next time, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.